It's never comfortable when you part ways with someone, no matter if it's private or in business. And the so-called exit interviews are challenging, to say the least, and I'm quite astonished that we once more see many negative examples in these days. Many organizations now face the reality that maybe the end of the pandemic takes a while longer than they think. Many organizations are not well prepared because they were too optimistic of what they think happens in the future, and they were too optimistic about the logical thinking and behavior of certain human beings. And some organizations have to make tough decisions, and some organizations have to cut jobs. However, how do you do that? And we have an outstanding negative example just recently, and this time I'm going to mention the company and the person who did it, and I only do that because it's part of international press already. I'm not telling you any secrets here. Better.com, a large real estate loan website. The CEO, Vishal Garg, laid off 900 people, that's about 10% of his staff, via Zoom call. That happened, by the way, just after he got new money from investors, and in blog articles, he even talked negatively about his staff. And of course, now we have to see, is this helpful? How could this happen? Because when you now look into press, the damage to the employer brand is massive and will probably take weeks, months, maybe years to correct that. And talking about how to do it better is what we're going to do today. By the way, talking about how to do it better, when you now think at the moment you lack a bit of motivation at the end of the year, listen to the English podcast which we had yesterday. Excellent interview with David Thomas about motivation. Someone who, from very challenging situation in which he grew up, really worked his way up and now is an internationally acting and well-booked keynote speaker. So I strongly recommend to listen to him on the English podcast. In case you speak German, I had a leader from General Motors, leader of purchasing, Tanja Daman-Götsch, who not only led purchasing for General Motors in the real world out there, but then became self-employed and gives excellent insights to modern purchasing. That's the German podcast, however, so you must be able to speak German to listen to that. But now we're looking at where are the problems with when you lay off people, when you have to fire people. How do you do it properly? How do you do it better than the situation which I just described to you? So problem number one is that often leaders are not qualified to do exit interviews. And I don't understand how companies cannot qualify their leaders for this important step. And you have to qualify leaders way ahead of the moment when it really has to happen. Of course, a bit of a refresher might help them, but you need to prepare them way earlier than when the demand pops up. Unfortunately, that's probably common sense, but not common behavior. Common behavior is that leaders delegate it often to HR. They don't have the insights. It's neither their responsibility nor their accountability to do that. So you do very bland, very neutral, very impersonal meetings where you lay off people, and suddenly you are very surprised about the negative backlash you receive online and in public. And by the way, it's your fault. And the third aspect of the problem is that we still have a picture where especially privileged people with their toxic heteronormative, especially toxic masculinity pictures think, oh, I'm a strong leader, I'm going to tell people that they're bad, that they have to leave, and I'm the strong leader who can sit through this. Well, when we look at what happened right here, and I'm going to tell you how the whole story ended in a minute, first, you won't sit through it. Second, your pictures are completely outdated. And third, if you behave in that way, maybe you think because you saw it in a movie like Wolf of Wall Street, maybe you think that this is something that has anything to do with reality. Hear the bad news. It doesn't. Step away from these Hollywood movie-like behaviors where you think that you're the new hero of work when you lay off people by screaming, shouting at them, or when you think that you have to be the heart leader, non-emotional to the core, that you stiff upper lip and all that nonsense. When you still stick to that, your leadership approach is completely outdated, not suitable for upcoming generations, and especially completely unsuitable to any organization that wants to be successful in a sustainable future. So, of course, how to do it better. And there are different approaches. You can do training, workshops, coaching, consulting, mentoring programs. Of course, you can have a bit more in the long run, project and interim management. And of course, you can have professional speakers at your event to at least give an impulse in the right direction, which is always a good step, a good first step. If you have any interest in that, just drop me an email to nb@nb-networks.com. nb@nb-networks.com. And when you want more than this podcast, I publish a lot more than just this podcast, articles, videocasts, and more, only accessible via the expert letter, which is sent out once per week. Go to expert.nb-networks.com, expert.nb-networks.com. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. There's only content in for you. But of course, now we have to talk about how to do it better. So step number 1 is, when you fire someone, when you lay someone off, when you decide that your ways will part, you always do a one-to-one chat with them, a one-to-one interview, a one-to-one meeting. And now, of course, people might say, oh, but that is just a lot of effort when you want to lay off 900 people. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Absolutely. But of course you can say we do the Zoom call thing, and then you afterwards have to pay 10 times the amount of money to catch up with a PR disaster you now have to face for weeks, months, most likely years. So when you save in the first place because you did something which no one should do, laying someone off on a 5-minute Zoom call, then of course you have to spend the money afterwards for PR, for reputation, for lawyers, etc., etc. You didn't save anything. You probably harmed the organization more then you did the organization well. And that's exactly what happened here, confirmed, by the way, by the investors. Because, and here's the end of the story, bad leadership is not accepted by investors because they want that their money is treated well and gives a good return. Vishal Garg, the CEO, has to take an immediate leave. For the German listeners right now, when in the US or the UK, people say something like, the position became untenable, or they take an immediate leave, it's the polite version of, they're out. They're fired, they're laid off, they might come back way later, but in most cases, they don't. An immediate leave is you just take someone out of the crosshair of the media and you tell the general public we're going to do something about this because what we saw here was clearly wrong. Investors do not accept bad leadership. And there's an ongoing investigation now at better.com about corporate and company culture. And this, I can guarantee you, this is the moment where everything will pop up that ever happened. People who behave like that, people who behave as a CEO to fire 900 people in a Zoom call, these people are not doing something wrong for the first time. It's not your first wrongdoing that you lay off 900 people in a Zoom call. There will be wrongdoings before, and Vishal Garg has quite a history with that already. And by the way, when and Vishal Garg said some people didn't work properly, they clocked in, but they didn't really work when they worked from home. When people don't work the way, and let's assume this is true, because of course people say that's not true. He says it is true. Let's just assume it's true. When people don't work properly, where is the problem? The problem can be the person, the problem can be the corporate culture, which is already a leadership issue, or the problem can be the leaders by themselves. Please look at the root cause. Do not look at the symptoms. A well-led organization by good leaders, by sustainable leaders, by well-trained leaders does not have these issues. So when you see people not working properly, probably the problem is you as a leader. You have to ensure that when you decide to part ways with someone, when you fire someone, when you lay someone off, it's not only very stressful at the moment, you put people very often, very quickly into economical hardship. In certain countries, for example, in the United States, people lose their health care when they don't have a certain job, which can be a tremendous stress for families, for example, where you have family members who are relying on health care. So everything you do these interviews in a way that you can always accompany every step afterwards when it comes to an escalation. Offer them a point of contact, offer them phone numbers, email addresses, offer them additional measures. Make the transition from this job to their next job as smooth as possible. And of course, and I know that now some people will listen to this and say, it's not my job to make people find another job. Well, that is factually correct. However, do you want to protect your organization from harm? Yes? Okay. The easiest way to protect it from harm is that you say, unfortunately, our ways part here. This is the program we have set up for you, that here you most likely will find your next job, or these are the services you can use. And I mean real services. I've seen many of these packages and programs that were just purchased off the shelf by the cheapest bid, where people sit in seminars of non-qualified trainers who tell them how to write a CV. These trainers struggle by themselves because they are not professionally qualified. They get dead low daily rates, and then you think, after I tick the box, I'm the best employer in the world. This does not happen, because the online option, Glassdoor.com, for example, as a large employer, a platform where employees can rate their employers, or in Germany, Kununu, for example, large platforms where you can say how great or not great is this employer. You have to face the situation that people anonymously can put their opinion out there. And of course, you can comment afterwards, but we all know when a large organization lays off people, the general public and the media landscape and also the political leaders, they are all against you. The general public is against you because you are wealthy, other people are not. People are always in for the underdog, especially in the English-speaking world. The media landscape has a good story, and people listen to good stories, and the best story is that the rich guy gets a punch in the face, so that's probably what they aim for. And political leaders, especially when it's their region which is affected, they don't want to have high unemployment rates in their regions with their constituents, because they know they do not get re-elected when unemployment is high, because then people, especially when they are long-term unemployed, tend to vote for extremist parties. And the more extreme it gets, the more people have a go against you. So stop thinking that after laying someone off, it's all none of your business what happens to these people. It is very much your business, at least when you are interested in preventing your organization being harmed with reputation or legal steps against them. You have to see that any step after the talk, after the interview, after the exit interview, must be accompanied, not by pressure, not by telling people you're not allowed to talk about XYZ, because people have the option of doing it anonymously via the internet. You can't control that. There is no chance. You have to see the factual side and the emotional side. The factual side often is known. So when people see hundreds of millions of dollars collected by investors now laying people off, that's not a great picture, is it? So as soon as you lay someone off, people have to understand what you do here. Is it understandable? Can you prove it factually? And is it plausible? These are you of course have way more aspects than just these. But these are the basic minimum three. Is it understandable? Can you factually prove that it's necessary? And is it plausible? When you don't meet these three minimum criteria, expect consequences. And you have to be prepared. And these consequences, all of them, cost money. So when you save money in the first place, you spend way more afterwards. It is necessary to professionally prepare your people for a professional exit interview. And of course, mainly from 2 points of view. The hard skills, these are the legal aspects of an exit interview, and of course the soft skills, for example, communication, conflict management, or the leadership you always claim to have in your organization and deliver on your promises. As we see, it's a complex matter, and when you talk about complexity, once more, I can only highly recommend you to listen to the podcast we had yesterday. David Thomas on the English podcast about motivation, and Tanja Daman-Götz in the German podcast about modern purchasing. I am really looking forward to the discussions we're going to have about this topic this week. Write me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, nb@nb-networks.com, because it is now important that what you heard here, what you listen to, that you bring it to practice, in your organization. Apply, because only with application in your organization you will have the necessary changes being put in place before you face the PR catastrophe that the company we talked about today now has to face for the next days, weeks, months, maybe years. It is very important right now that even when you disagree with me, and some people might still sit there and think, oh, I'm one of these old-fashioned leaders, I'm rather conservative. Look, I'm a self-employed entrepreneur. I am in for less regulation and lower taxation. So these are core conservative values. However, we have to face the reality, if you like it or not. There's a new generation coming into the job market, and it gets challenging by the day. Stop your toxic masculinity and think you are the hero of the new work because you just like to stand in the spotlight being the strong man or the strong person. This is not how any leadership works in today's times. Looking forward to having discussions about this with you. And drop me an email, as I said before. And now apply, because that is how the necessary changes will get into your organization. If you need any help, contact me anytime. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing for me left to say. Thank you very much for your time.